Question number 1. Dear Dr. Chloe, can you tell me how to help my brother? He's in a toxic relationship with a terrible wife.
Wow. Okay. So, first of all, I want to say I think it's really nice that you're thinking of your brother and that
Yeah.
you notice him and that you care about him.
Yes.
The only thing that I'm curious about, though, is does your brother necessarily think that he's in a toxic relationship? Because a
Right.
lot of times I'll have people who, contact my office because they think somebody else in their life needs help or needs to change. Maybe your brother likes, domineering, pushy women or, whatever it is that makes you think his wife is toxic. So the first thought is to really make sure that this is about your brother rather than being about what you think about your brother.
I
But
love
that
that idea of him just being like, man, I'm happier than I've ever been. And the brother being like, get her out of here. I don't like her.
Totally, yeah, because I mean, no two people are alike, and we don't really know what happens between those two people. However, if you, for example, notice your brother's wife always making these really belittling, mean comments, or things are going on that you know about that you really think, hey, that's not right, you could totally go to your brother in private and say, hey, look, this may not be my place to say. And I want to say you are the boss of your own relationship. So tell me to get lost if this isn't helpful. But I just want to say I've noticed certain times when your wife seems really hard on you. Have you noticed that? Is that something that you want to talk about? You want some support? Can I help in some way? Because I see it and it doesn't look right to me, but maybe it's okay for you. And that way you are noticing your brother. And if there's something wrong, you're making it clear that you're there to support, but you're also not overstepping into his relationship.
Yeah, I wanted to say that number 1, I'm sorry that your brother is dating my ex. And number 2, what would you say, Dr. Chloe, you do if, because sometimes, and this happened actually with me and my ex, and it's happening with another sibling of mine as well, is when you don't take a kind approach, sometimes it can actually make that talk, if that relationship is indeed toxic, it can make that toxic relationship turn into sort of like a Bonnie and Clyde true romance ride or die, where it's like, oh, the family doesn't get us, all right then, dude. And then they start to isolate even more. I think taking your approach might avoid that, but what would you suggest that they do? And maybe the couple's already doing that, if there's any pushback in that relationship, especially if one is sort of emotionally manipulative, if they start to just disassociate or pull back from the family, do you suggest giving them time and space, or is there a move you can do for that?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point because one of the classic things that an abusive person will do is they will isolate the victim from their support network. So that's why, for example, if you do come out guns a-blazing and say, hey, your wife is awful, blah, blah, blah. And if, the guy maybe hasn't quite realized it yet and he confides in his wife that this is what was said, and if it came off, very strong, then you're actually paving the way for that toxic wife to start playing the victim herself
Mm.
and to start saying, oh, your family's against me. Let's not spend time around them. And so it could really backfire, which is why I think it's important to do it in a very gentle way that says, hey, I totally get it. I may not be seeing everything. I may be misunderstanding things, but as your brother, I love you. So I just had to ask, like, is everything okay? Because I've seen such and such and it hasn't seemed right to me, but maybe it's like okay with you. And maybe I've misunderstood things. And that way you're not vilifying the wife and potentially even making things worse.
I really could have used this podcast 10 years ago. Okay, good job.